Welcome to Financial Issues, where we join reality with truth, helping you make the most of your money by honoring God with your investments. Now listen in as we give you the practical tools and advice you need to become a biblically responsible investor.
Welcome to Financial Issues. Thanks for tuning in today. At Financial Issues, we defund darkness by giving you a biblically responsible investment strategy where you can become your own portfolio manager and screen out the companies that are contributing to the darkness of this world, things like abortion, pornography, the LGBTQ agenda. We make sure that the money that we're trusted to manage does not end up promoting those causes, the ones that grieve the heart of the Lord. And where we encourage you to fund the light, to be joyful, generous, and obedient givers. On today's show, we are going to answer some of the questions that you guys have been sending in. We'll also have Jason MacDowell on in the next segment to discuss some of the exciting new investment accounts that could be in the making to help make Americans savers again. And we'll get right now to some encouragement from the stewardship verse of the day that comes from Deuteronomy 30:19. It says, I call heaven and earth as witnesses today against you that I have set before you life and death, blessing and cursing. Therefore, choose life that both you and your descendants may live. What do you think, Seth?
This is a good one, Shana. So this verse is a salvific verse. It has some foreshadowings into the New Testament, but it's for the Old Testament people of God. Basically, what we can take from this is we either trust in Christ by choosing life or we do not. Now, I do believe we can also rightly apply this verse to the command that God gives for his people to defend life in general. We believe that life is a gift from God, that God has created all human beings to reflect his image. And so we need to choose life, especially when we're talking about the most marginalized, forgotten, forsaken people group in the world, literally a people who are voiceless, and that's unborn children, Shana.
But not forgotten in the scripture because
Amen.
It mentions
That's right.
You and your descendants
That's right.
shall live.
Yep.
You know, in Deuteronomy 30:19, God gives his people a clear choice between life and death, between blessing and curses. He urges us to choose life by loving and obeying him, not just for our own sake, but for the sake of those future generations. This is a call to intentional, faithful stewardship, recognizing that our decisions today have a lasting impact, both spiritually and practically. It reminds us that honoring God with our choices, including our financial ones, leads to life-giving outcomes for ourselves and those who we influence. Since abortion was legalized in 1973, over 60 million children have been aborted in the United States. Abortion, just in the United States, has wiped out at least an entire generation. But the generational loss doesn't stop there. Many of those children who would have been born would have grown up, had families, and continued the legacy of life. When we consider their children and grandchildren, entire family trees were never even given a chance to take root and grow. We're looking at potentially hundreds of millions of lives lost across 2 or more generations. This is not just a statistic, it's a spiritual tragedy and a sobering reminder of the lasting impact of a culture that has not valued life. Let's reverse this curse. Let's choose life. Let's choose blessing by giving to preborn. And we hope that you'll do that this month as we continue our preborn campaign. We're a little bit more than halfway through the campaign, which ends at the end of May. We're trying to raise $20,000 to help preborn continue its good work as it fights back against the darkness of abortion. Amen. All right. How about we get to some questions?
Good call, Shana. Let's do it. Let's start with Mary. Mary is 70. She says, I became a member years ago. I'm finding that I never sat down long enough to really research all that the website has to offer. Her first question is, where do I start? Shana, she gives some more information there. I don't know if you want to tackle that one first or if you want to check out more of her information before tackling it.
Starting at the beginning is always a good place.
Yeah, sounds good.
So, you know, the website is a huge improvement. It's much more user-friendly. It organizes the information much much better. So there are some videos on there on how to get started. You can spend some time looking at those, but that's a great place to start. And, we are continuing all the time to work on more and more instructional videos to add there.
Awesome. So then she says, I'm 70, working full time, plus drawing on my Social Security benefits now. And at a point that I want to put funds, planning on about $4,000 aside on a monthly basis. I have a 401k that's matched up to 3%. I have a small IRA, roughly $40,000. And I know that 401k sitting in my savings account isn't the best plan. Excuse me, that $4,000 sitting in her savings account isn't the best plan. I don't want to take a lot of risk, but I'm not sure that CDs are my best option either. What do you recommend that wouldn't take constant monitoring on my part?
Yeah. So, the $4,000 in a savings account, if that is an emergency savings, then that is a good place for it. I know it doesn't earn a whole lot, but the purpose of it there is for preservation and to be available so that you don't have to sell any of your long-term investments if you have a short-term need. But as far as the money that you have to be able to invest on a monthly basis, if you're looking for something more than what CDs offer, you're going to have to take some risk. So, I don't really have an option that has zero risk and a lot of growth. There's really no such thing. But, you can educate yourself about the odds of the risk, market risk and the value going down. And, you weigh those out. If growth is more important to you than preservation, a lot of times that prompts us to take a risk that, that short-term values could go down. But, statistics tell us, and, of course, past performance is never a guarantee of future results. But if we look at long-term strategies over the past, more times than not, you end up way better off in the future with the growth that you get than by just playing it safe with all of the money. So, a strategy that you could use that doesn't take a lot of monitoring on your part is to pick our fund strategy. So we have one strategy. We have some asset allocation models. If you want to be your own portfolio manager, if you want to build a portfolio that contains mostly individual companies and holdings from our buy list, that is a more hands-on way to do it. However, if you want a less hands-on way, something that you don't have to monitor as much, then I would choose the fund model. We're going to give you some funds and some ETFs that are professionally managed or selected, if in the case of the ETFs. And, you have professionals who make those day-to-day decisions, and you just have to maybe pay attention to it, once or twice a year to make sure that you're rebalancing.
Good stuff, Shana. I hope that's helpful for Mary. Up next is Judy. Judy is sharing that back in February, that's MA5 was put on the buy list. She mentions the cost was put on. Then it topped out a couple more dollars a share, just over 16% gain. She says, as long-term holders, are we expected to rebalance taking 16% gain if fully allocated at 3%? Or is that a preference specific to each partner? And does this also apply to each stock in particular, or just rebalancing it quarterly? In general, quarterly rebalancing seems to leave more profit on the table for me. Thanks so much. 60 years old. What do you think for Judy?
So lots of questions there. You may have to remind me of some of them.
For sure. Yep.
So I guess the first one is about rebalancing. And, we suggest rebalancing at the most quarterly. So that's every 3 months, because what happens if you rebalance too often, like if you try to do it weekly or monthly or something like that, you're gonna end up not giving your investments enough time to run. If you wait longer than that, if you wait years, what ends up happening is that you end up with a much more aggressive portfolio than what you had started with, because it's the aggressive investments that tend to appreciate at a faster rate than the other ones. So if that's the case, you never pair them back, then you'll end up with more of those aggressive investments and more risk than you're wanting to take. So doing it quarterly, at least two to no more than 4 times a year is a good way to rebalance. Does that answer?
I think that actually answers each of her questions, Shannon. No, yeah, okay. that was great. She was wondering too if it's a preference specific to each partner, but I think you addressed that as well. That there is a model to kind of do this. Yeah. Definitely. That's good. Let's see if we can squeeze one more in here, Shana. John is asking about a specific holding, has no full-time employees. He's wondering if you could explain about that. Is it strange of this company to do something like this? I don't really understand. Thanks for all you do for us at FISM, and he's 63.
Well, the company does have employees. I think there's between 20 and 30 employees that the company does have. It is a partnership, a limited partnership, and it would be strange if a company didn't have any employees at all. So I think probably just the source that you're looking at maybe doesn't pull up the information about the employees that it has. So you could probably go to the company's website. You could see that indeed it does have a chairman and a CEO and a president and a CFO. So those are definitely considered employees. All right, folks, we've got to take a break, but stick with us because we're going to come back on the other side of the break with my friend and colleague, Jason MacDowell, and we're going to talk about the things that are in the works to make Americans savers again. I'm your host, Shana Burke. Stay tuned.
How is Timothy Plan continuing to lead the fight as you guys now enter your fourth decade of leading this fight of biblically responsible investing?
We've been too silent for too long, and we can no longer be silent. You stand up, like Ronald Reagan said, we're only one generation away from losing all of our liberty. Yeah. It has to be fought for. I wish it didn't. And you can fight for it. You don't need guns and ammunition and that. You can fight for it, especially with your dollars, because it's always about the money. And when the money starts impacting people, they start paying attention. When we launched this, they said it couldn't be done, but here we are 30 years later. They said you couldn't get competitive returns, but here we are.
What a tremendous testament of God's grace.
Go to financialissues.org/Timothy Plans to learn more about Timothy Plan.
In a time when children are facing unprecedented challenges, the gospel stands as the greatest source of hope. At Crossroads Kids Club, we have the incredible opportunity to bring the message of Jesus into public schools nationwide. Join us in sharing the life-changing hope of the gospel with the next generation. The need is urgent, but God's love is powerful. Together, we can offer Christ's love to children who are longing for it. To join us, visit reachOurSchools.com. That's reachOurSchools.com.
May is a time to honor mothers, their strength, sacrifice, and unconditional love. But for many women, motherhood feels uncertain and overwhelming. Fear and doubt leave them considering abortion. You can give hope. Just $28 helps a woman hear her baby's heartbeat, a powerful moment that leads 80% of mothers to choose life. Go to preborn.com/FISM to give today.
Securities offered through G.A. Reppel & Company, a registered broker-dealer and investment advisor, member FINRA and SIPC. Opinions expressed by Shana are hers alone and are for informational purposes only and do not necessarily represent those of G.A. Reppel or the outlet on which you are listening. You should consider how the information applies to your situation prior to personally implementing it and consult any financial professional you work with to make sure it's applicable to your financial plan.
Welcome back to Financial Issues. Thanks for sticking with us here. Well, it is May. We are in the midst of our campaign to help preborn ministries raise money to fight back against the darkness of abortion. I've also got my friend Jason MacDowell back here with me. Jason, let's get kicked off. Just tell us a little bit about what preborn ministries means to you.
What it means to me, saving the unborn, but more importantly, witnessing to them, sharing the gospel. And the reason for that is being a supporter of preborn since, I guess, 2017 and 18. I've been blessed to be able to receive sometimes when you do give to preborn, you do receive sometimes a letter of the witness and the choices made by the individual, but also you get to get some of the ultrasounds and they come in bursts. I know it's probably somewhere around 90 days or so. I don't know if they're going to do it for every single one because they can get overwhelmed, but I have a whole envelope full of these ultrasounds and letters of people that changed their decisions there. So supporting preborn is huge. It's been a big part of my life and where I like to give extra to as far as tithing even. So it's very important to me.
That's awesome. Yep. Not only do they send those ultrasounds, but they send documents about the financials of their ministry, and so that that helps us to get the proof that we need that our dollars are being stewarded well as we are stewarding them well. Well, let's shift topics just a little bit. This is a financial show, and we're always encouraging people to save and to invest and to do it in a biblically responsible way. And I think it's important, especially for the next generations coming up. Our grandparents were really good savers. The boomers, not as much as their parents, but still better than some of the following generations. But, Jason, let's talk about this. Bring the receipts on what I just said. Talk about the stats and tell us how Americans are or aren't saving these days.
Yeah, so there's a statistic from the Bureau of Economic Analysis saying that Americans currently save just 0.6% of gross national income. Great. In the
Not
90s,
even the 3% match.
Yeah. In the 90s, it was 7.5%. And then in the 1960s, it was 12.6%. So there's some contributing factors to these numbers that we're not going to get into the weeds on, like the Federal Reserve interest rate changes, inflation, welfare encouragement, as we see today, and the cheapest labor to bypass the American worker. But we are going to look specifically as just issues with the government's involvement within our savings accounts. So the current law provides... Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
The current law provides at least 11 different types of tax advantage saving vehicles. So we got 11, each with a variety of rules and limitations. Key point, 4 main types of retirement saving provisions, 3 more for saving related to education and disabilities, and then 3 more for saving related to health and dependent care, and 1 for saving related to emergencies. So there are some options. But what all these have in common are just rules because they are qualified, because the government says so. For instance, health savings accounts have tax-free growth and deductible contributions to the individual, but are only tax-free if the distributions are for qualified expenses subject by those rules. Roths have tax-free growth and tax-free distributions based on its own rules involving qualified situations. So these set of restrictions of contributions and distributions, individuals' age, and how much money you make can all impact which of these accounts will actually serve the right purpose in planning. And it sure would make our lives as licensed advisors, or pretty much any American's life much easier if we had an account that eases greatly on these rules, although they're still going to be qualified, while having the best benefits from each of these types of qualified accounts.
Yeah. Trump is a law and order kind of guy, but he doesn't like a lot of rules or red tape, right? So he seems to have a whole lot of balls in the air right now. And the really important ones, trade, tariffs, taxes, taking back manufacturing that we've sent across the ocean to the detriment of so many American workers. And he and his friends seem to have a lot of answers, too. I've talked about this a couple of times on the show, but I think it's worth repeating. Let's talk again about some of the ways that the Trump policies can make Americans savers again.
Yeah, I agree. And you touched on some great points, Shana. So I thought it'd be cool to just focus on one of them. It's going to be the Universal Savings Account, or called the USA Act, introduced by Ted Cruz and Representative Harshbarger. So the act has been introduced in both the House and Senate and referred to the House and Ways Committee. So we have movement there on it. And something I'd like to see happen. So the universal savings accounts are tax advantage savings vehicles with unrestricted use of funds, allowing participants to save, invest, and withdraw funds for any reason. So no
like freedom.
Constraints. Yeah, it's good that it's USA, right? But the funny part about universal savings accounts are they're not a new concept. With both the UK and Canada actually have their own. And you'll kind of see in this proposed law where it's pulling some of these ideas. So Canada provides a tax-free savings account to anyone 18 or older. The annual contribution is $5,200 American dollars, and any unused contributions from one year can be carried forward to the next year. And then contributions are made with after-tax dollars. So that's a point there. Earnings grow tax-free. Withdrawals can be made at any time for any reason without penalty. And then you have the UK. Has a similar one. It's actually called a individual saving account with an annual contribution limit of $25,000. So that sounds familiar. It has no income limits, Good point. And grows tax-free with tax-free distributions. Easy to go. So the UK also has a junior account with contribution limits, along with lifetime ISA for 18 to 50-year-olds. So they're different in the fact that they like to give more to the accumulatory age group, 18 to 50, that can go over their $25,000 contribution limit. Which is meant purposely for supplemental retirement savings and for purchasing a home, which would apply definitely today.
Where we make you wait to catch up until you're 50.
Exactly. There's a point. Or 60 to 63 with a little bit more on top of the little bit more, right? So we've got all these rules. So the U.S. Act would do the following. Distributions, as I meant before, from the Universal Savings Accounts are not subject to income tax, nor included in gross income. Gross income, that's important. And if it's not included, then we can think about IRMA planning. An initial contribution limit right now, as their proposed documents show, $10,000, which increases by $500 every year, capping out at $25,000 per year. So I kind of just do the simple math with that. There is inflation mentioned into the short bill. The bill actually is only 12 pages, so it's actually easier to read than the 4,000.
12 pages. Wow.
12 pages.
And, Thanks, Ted. We can't get too ahead of ourselves because it is just still a bill, but we're hoping it turns in more.
Exactly.
Go ahead.
So it would take about 30 years if you use that math to get up to that contribution max at that point, if by the proposed laws. So no contribution limits are based on income. And what that means is that you could be a very high earner, 300,000, 400,000, and be able to contribute to this type of account. So anyone could open it. It benefits all Americans. So accounts would be allowed to be invested for that compound growth, except in life insurance products. So unlike IRAs, life insurance products would not be allowed to be in this type of account. So that's specified in there. And then another thing I was looking for was the beneficial side of things, how to pass this down for the legacy and estate planning. Well, inherited spouses are mentioned right now in this bill from Ted. Is a name change only account. So like with an IRA, if your primary beneficiary is your spouse, then it's just a name change in that case. But for non-spousal beneficiary, the language talks about it being considered distributed on the date of the owner's death, and the account is no longer considered a universal savings account. I say this is a nuanced area that I hope Congress looks into and adds some clarity. Right. So the last point is the bill also speaks of qualified rollover contributions, as long as it's from another account of the same owner. I have a lot more questions with that, so we'll consider that a clarity option for Congress because it is nuanced, especially in our field, but it does mention it in the 12 pages, so that's good. But yeah, so how would this apply? We know that there's no limit to who could actually open this up, and that's fantastic. There's also, it would be a great benefit for grandkids or for legacy, accounts that way. But I know you've mentioned the MAGA account is addressing this, which was awesome, and I'm glad you covered that too. This would also benefit the lower earner that could potentially produce higher earnings and the ability to liquidate and use savings as needed without all of the penalties. Like for instance, if I have a Roth right now, I'm 37, putting money in there is a great account to do, but I'm also wanting to save for a house. So what I have to do is I have to only use a money market, and that's to save the cash. So I can't really amplify that, or I have to be subject to any taxes and a taxable brokerage account. So this USA account would really help for big savings, but the need can be pulled out with any Uncle Sam taking from it. So the other part is I thought when you first mentioned this, that the Roth option was going to get nixed. But that's not the case. So we have an additional option to the Roth with it for different purposes, but also having those similar rules, one being a little bit better than the other. So that's great to have two places. Maybe you max out the Roth. Now you can look at doing this one or, even the taxable brokerage account for the long-term access. So
I love the idea of making Americans savers again, or better yet, investors. And, so there's this pushback, wouldn't giving $1,000 to every kid born, allowing folks to keep more of their investment gains and build up non-taxable future streams of income be counterproductive to the balancing of the budget and the paying off of the debt? And won't the budget hawks be pushing back? And they are. But, at the end of the day, I think this bill's going to get done. Of course, the Democrats will do do anything that they can because it is their undoing to see Donald Trump be right again. But we also have some well-meaning old school conservatives pushing back. But Kevin Hassett has an answer for that. He says that they're really worried about nothing. The estimates that they're using for the cost of this bill assumes a 2.1% GDP growth near term and a 1.8% long-term growth. And he believes that all of the choices, the policies that Trump is putting forward combined, and I've been saying there's all of these moving parts, the lower regulation, lower taxes, which translates into higher consumer spending, because people get to keep more of their money, will really get us closer to a 3% growth rate, which is then going to put the revenue of the bill at $4 trillion, which is more than the bill's projected to cost, meaning that it pays for itself. Thanks for joining us today, Jason. Great conversation as always. Folks, if you're listening on a station that only carries the 30-minute version of the show, we have to bid you a farewell. If you want to catch the full show, go to financialissues.org/live, or better yet, download the FISM app. For everyone else, stick around. We'll be back with more Financial Issues.
In the last 10 to 15 years being in ministry, being married, something that has been constant in our lives is Samaritan Ministries. As we've moved, we've had babies, we've had different things come up, we have just been able to rely on Samaritan in ways that we never really even thought about before becoming members.
Our heart's desire is to plant roots and be in a place for a really long time. It's how we were raised. We see the benefits of that, but we also see the open-handedness of being used by the Lord wherever He calls, because we just assumed when we started pursuing church planting, the quickest way to get from point A to point B is a straight line. And with the Lord, sometimes you find out it looks a lot more like this. And yet, Samaritan was with us through the entire thing.
We didn't have to look into, we have to change insurances now because we've moved states or whatever the case may be. And it's just been a real blessing to us in different phases of life.
I'm Kyle.
I'm Colleen.
And we're the Gen X.
And we're Samaritan members.
Every day, thousands of women are faced with the decision of whether to have an abortion. But one ultrasound can change everything. Preborn is stepping in to help. In crisis pregnancy centers across the nation, they offer women the opportunity to see their baby, hear the heartbeat, and learn about the gospel. For just $28, you can provide an ultrasound, giving a mother the chance to choose life. And there's more. When we reach 200 ultrasounds, Preborn will place a new ultrasound machine in a clinic, creating a lasting impact for years to come. To make your gift go even further, a generous donor will match every dollar you give, doubling your impact. Give today, save lives, share hope. Don't wait. You can make motherhood possible. Just go to preborn.com/FISM to give now. Again, that's preborn.com/FISM. What separates Crossroads Kids Club from other ministries to reach school-age children? What sets you guys apart?
First of all is our connection with local churches. We mobilize, equip, train, support local church partners. We're right inside the schools. There's a number of ministries that try to serve public school children outside of the school, but we're able to be right there on the campus. Another key thing is just our values. Our highest value is actually relationships. And so we're not a ministry that's driven by a lot of fancy technology or flashy stuff, but rather getting adults who love Jesus and who love kids to sit on the floor with a group of kids, to listen to them, to love them. So I would say the relational emphasis and the simplicity of the model is actually something that makes Crossroads special as well.
Help reach kids with the hope of the gospel. Visit reachOurschools.com.
Welcome back to Financial Issues, everybody. Great to be here with you all today. Good to see so many of you on the chat as well. Matt in Georgia, Lisa, who is now calling me Sirth, which I will accept. Thank you for that, Lisa. John, Eddie, Nelson, George, Dave and Darlene, William. Good to see all of you. Andy as well is in there. Daryl. I think I got everybody. Of course, Uncle John. Can't forget Uncle John. Great to see so many of you all there. Thanks for joining us. And James from South Carolina, too. Can't forget James on the chat this morning. Well, we are having a good time this morning here, folks, and I'm so thrilled to tell you that we're making some great progress with our preborn campaign as well. As of this morning, we're almost at $80,000. We're not quite at the halfway point in terms of our finances that we've raised, though we are at the halfway point of the campaign. I am not concerned about that because I've seen God do it before. That's the way the Financial Issues family often tends to go as well, is kind of waiting until the back half. So if you're one of those people, if you're considering doing some year-end giving, even if you're doing it from more of a kind of non-conventional way, I can't stress enough that preborn is the place to do it. Again, our goal is $280,000. Every $5,600 we raise, we'll underwrite an ultrasound machine that goes into a preborn clinic that will save hundreds, possibly thousands of babies' lives. Pretty amazing. So that one small gift, even if you can only give $28, that $28 gift covers one ultrasound scan, which could be life-saving. So whatever it is between you and the Lord to give, but I can't tell you how excited I am. We had a huge gift come in last week. We're making some great progress here. So now's the time to do it. We're really ramping this up here. So if you folks are interested in giving, preborn.com/FISM. You can also call Preborn. If you dial pound 250 and say keyword baby, you'll then talk to an operator. You just have to tell them that you heard about this campaign from Financial Issues. This is part of the Financial Issues campaign, and then they'll make sure that gift goes to being part of this particular campaign. So again, preborn.com/FISM. You can see a QR code on the screen. You can give via that way as well. Just hold your phone up to it. It'll take you to a link to give securely. Speaking of which, Sam, we saw an interesting headline you shared with me last week. Really interesting and frankly quite troubling that I'd love to get to our audience's attention here. Has everything to do, of course, what we're talking about with preborn, but also with your finances as well. What can you tell us about this here, Sam?
Yeah, it just goes to highlight how important this preborn campaign is. So according to Planned Parenthood's 2023-2024 annual report, this is their latest data, Planned Parenthood performed a record-breaking 402,000 abortions that year. So that's about the size of Tampa, Florida. Just imagine in one year, the whole city of Tampa, Florida just being wiped out. Well, that happened.
Tampa's a major city,
Yes,
folks.
exactly.
That's a big city.
Gone.
Yeah.
2023, 2024 just wiped out.
That's just unbelievable.
Devastating.
Really sad.
Yeah. And to make matters worse though, Seth, as you said, you're paying for this because Planned Parenthood received nearly $800 million in government revenue that year. That's $2 million of your dollars a day. Thankfully, this does come as Republicans are trying to defund Planned Parenthood through their big, beautiful bill, through Trump's big, beautiful bill. Let's pray that happens. But of course, taxpayers aren't the only ones funding Planned Parenthood, as over $680 million also came in through private donations that year as well.
Sam, it really is sad, both of those things. Some good news there. You mentioned that big, beautiful bill. That was some of the big news we got from the weekend. Key House Committee is advancing that bill here. So it's not being stopped. We're seeing some progress there. So hopefully we see that pass through, definitely. But let me just say a couple things about this as we unpack this. If you are one of those people, and I'm guessing if you're part of the Financial Issues family, you're probably not, but maybe you are. If you're one of those people who assumed Roe v. Wade's overturn in 2022 was the victory, that was the finish line, awesome, it's back to the states, we're good, we can put our feet up and relax, you are out of your mind. You're out of your mind. You've got to get back in the fight. That's all I can say. Pro-abortionists responded to that loss on their part like any wounded animal would. They lashed out. We can't be surprised by that. The victory that we enjoyed in June of 2022, that only fueled the enemy. That fueled them to strike back harder than ever. Over 400,000 babies murdered. That is a crazy amount. Sam mentioned it's, what was it, Sam? Is it larger than the entire city of Tampa, right around there?
It's close to the size. Also, I think Aurora.
Okay.
That's another city. I'm looking at roughly around those sizes right now.
Just keep in mind, we've already mentioned Cleveland is like 350,000, so that's less. New Orleans is like 320. It's a massive number of human lives.
So you're in the range of Tulsa, Oklahoma, Tampa, Florida, Arlington, Texas, and Aurora, Colorado, all around that 400,000 mark.
Massive, massive cities. The population, just imagine if it was all wiped out. That's what Planned Parenthood did, dismembering, murdering over 400,000 babies. Also, if you're at all surprised that the largest baby murdering machine, probably in the world, definitely in our country, just so happens to be involved in this transgender mutilation of children and adults, transgender surgeries. We know it as human mutilation. You are living with your head under a rock. That's not a coincidence. It's the same malevolent, demonic forces who hate the image of God behind both of those things. Think about it. They want to see the image of God destroyed. They love it when babies get murdered, and they love it when people get sterilized so they can't create more image bearers. They love that. They absolutely love it. What better way to use taxpayer-funded and nonprofit monies? That's Planned Parenthood's two income streams there. We'll get to that in a second. Tax dollars, not-for-profit donations, all for the end goal of killing babies inside the womb. If they make it to the light of day, let's mutilate them. That's what they're trying to do. We have got to see, folks, this is a spiritual fight here. This is not just physical, political things happening. There's a spiritual element to this that is really driving all of it, actually. And so we have to be aware of that. And that's why, what Preborn is doing is so important. I hope and pray, and I hope it's true for all of you. I know for many of you it is. These dual income streams for Planned Parenthood just makes your blood boil and you want to see it stopped. I'm not sure which one, Sam, is more egregious. The fact that our tax dollars are funding this, or the fact that millions of people have been hoodwinked to give donations
are
to
willingly giving,
like
and they think they're doing something good because it's a donation. So they think, look, it's charity.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
It's unbelievable. I know people, I've had conversations with them, I've pushed back at them, people who were part of starting different Planned Parenthood organizations in certain amounts of the country, certain places of the country. And it's the same idea. They are hoodwinked. They're fooled. And so, folks, I can't encourage you enough here. How you steward your money matters. It is a matter of life and death. It's a matter of life and death. How you steward your money is so, so very important. Dan Steiner once shared with me the story of how he actually met RFK Jr. And so he's personal friends with him, and told him his life's work when he introduced himself was to put Planned Parenthood out of business. RFK Jr. was very happy to hear that, by the way. That is my hope and prayer. That is my hope and prayer, that we see Planned Parenthood dead and gone in our generation, that there's never a single Planned Parenthood facility left. I pray that every single one of the employees at Planned Parenthood loses their job, and then they can come to faith in Jesus Christ and they can repent for what they've done. Absolutely. That should be our prayer as well. That is why we support Preborn, folks. Preborn is in the business of putting Planned Parenthood out of business. Not because they're in any way hateful or they have grudges against Planned Parenthood. It's because they love babies and they want to save babies. And babies right now are the target. They have a target on their backs. So I just cannot stress that enough. How we spend our money, how we invest our money as well. That's why it's so important. This model that we offer, biblically responsible investing, we don't want a single cent of your investor dollars going to fund this stuff. Okay? It's not just the money you give, it's the money you invest as well. So I can't stress it enough, folks. Again, preborn.com/FISM. Thank you. So many of you have given so faithfully, and we just want to say thank you so much. You've prayed, you've given, you've shared about it. We can't thank you enough. So if you're one of those folks who's on the fence, I can't encourage you enough. Now's the time to give. Preborn.com/FISM. Help us put a stop to this darkness. Absolutely, in the name of Jesus Christ. All right, folks, I pretty much blasted through the whole segment talking about that because we got the Ag Report coming up here. So we'll come back, we'll talk about the markets and a few other things here on financial issues. Make sure to say hello as well, folks, if you can, over on the chat. Here comes Craig Haugaard with today's Ag Report, and then we'll be back right after this with more financial issues. Stick with us.
This is Craig Haugaard with your Financial Issues Ag Update for May 19th. Well, traders looked at the corn planting progress late last week and seemed satisfied to let prices drift lower. Exports remain strong, but the demand picture is currently playing second fiddle to a fairly benign weather outlook and a good planting pace. At the closing bell, July corn was a nickel lower at $4.43 1/2. Soybean traders are noticing that since the start of the U.S. marketing year in September, U.S. soybean exports to China are at a 12-year low, aside from the previous trade war years. Additionally, Brazilian volumes to China during the September to January time slot were down 40% year over year. Now, when you look at Brazil's February to April shipment, we're still notching an all-time high in that slot, up 13% from year-ago numbers. And in other news, the Rosaria Grain Exchange raised their 2024-25 Argentinian soybean estimate by 3 million metric tons to 48.5 million. So it looks like a lot of competition out there for the business that does exist. July beans finished today a penny and a quarter lower at $10.50 per bushel. The combination of lower corn futures, beneficial rains in the Dakotas, and solid yield prospects from the Kansas City wheat tour all pressured wheat prices on Friday. Minneapolis July wheat was 6 3/4 cents lower at $5.73 1/4. Kansas City dropped by 11 3/4 cents, selling at $5.16 1/2, in which Chicago was 7 3/4 cents lower at $5.25 per bushel. Cotton futures continue to slide lower. July futures were down 54 points at the closing bell, settling at 64.89. In livestock, we were higher straight across the board. We had August live cattle futures 90 cents stronger at $206.75 per hundredweight. August feeder cattle were $1.77 1/2 higher, closing out the week at $297.60 per hundred. And July lean hog futures were a nickel better at $104.17 1/2 per hundredweight. Class 3 milk futures established a new life of contract high and then back down and closed lower. June futures ended the day 15 points lower at $19.24. This has been Craig Haugaard with your Financial Issues Ag Update. We'll be right back with more financial issues after this.
It's up to us to stand up and say, enough is enough. All of this unbiblical stuff that's going on, whether it's abortion or transsexual or LGBTQ, widespread pornography, human trafficking. Bottom line, it's still up to us. If we stop investing in these corporations that are trying to destroy us, sooner or later they're going to wake up.
To learn more about biblically responsible mutual funds and ETFs, go to timothyplan.com.
Every day, thousands of women are faced with the decision of whether to have an abortion. But one ultrasound can change everything. For just $28, you can provide an ultrasound, giving a mother the chance to choose life. To make your gift go even further, a generous donor will match every dollar you give, doubling your impact. Just go to preborn.com/FISM to give now. Again, that's preborn.com/FISM.
Every day, kids all across America are coming to school with some kind of hidden pain.
I've seen kids come in who are just so confused about what's right and what's wrong, just having no idea that God loves them. And this just breaks my heart. Crossroads has the opportunity to bring the Word of God right into the public school, to reach children right where they are.
And when we see that happen, we see God changing lives.
We want to see kids not only come to Christ, but pursue a lifelong relationship with Him. And so local churches are uniquely positioned to disciple those children as they become young adults and through their lifespan.
Crossroads comes alongside a church and provides that church with a club structure, curriculum, training, and ongoing coaching for them to run these outreaches in public schools.
If you are burdened for the children of America, consider making a donation to Crossroads Kids Club. For more information, visit reachOurschools.com. That's reachOurschools.com.
The opinions and recommendations expressed on this program do not necessarily represent the opinions of the station or any of the program sponsors. Additionally, all products or services offered by the program sponsors may not be known by the program.
Hey folks, speaking of financial issues, I posed a question in the chat during the break there. The question is, which one's more offensive to you? The fact that Planned Parenthood gets as much tax money as it does, or the fact that it gets as much in private donations as it does? And several of you shared and said tax money. Sam and I were both saying that we agree because it's our money. People can be deceived, and we can be, there's some level of charity we can have where they can say, okay, you're clearly deceived. You don't know what you're doing. I know people who genuinely think that Planned Parenthood does good things. And that they're in the business of it. They'll say, abortion is only a small thing. That's not actually true, by the way. But they're easily deceived. My tax dollar, that's my money, though. That's my money that's going to fund babies. And Sam, you made a great point also about the government's role in this as well.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it means that the government is working on $1 billion a year, at least according to this data, to kill its own citizens. Yeah. The government's job is to protect the citizens, and yet it's killing them with working on $1 billion a year. It's just amazing.
It just makes no sense at all that a government would do something like that. So, yeah, folks, that's why I love Preborn. I mean, Preborn's mission is they want to stand up against Planned Parenthood and slay the giant, and I'm all for it. I'm all for it. I say let's do it. So that's why we're doing this campaign. So again, preborn.com/FISM. Okay, markets Friday finished a great week and a good day. So they didn't move too much to start the day, but eventually they rose by midday, moderately positive. They got a little stronger as the afternoon wore on. They finished Friday all pretty positive. The Dow was up 0.75%. Same with the S&P 500. That was his fifth winning day in the row for the S&P 500, and the Nasdaq was up about 0.5%. For last week ending May 16th, all three indices really doing well. The Dow was up 3.5%. S&P 500 was up 5.25% or so, and then the Nasdaq was up 7.25%. So tech stocks had a great week. Nvidia jumped a lot. Meta jumped. Apple and Microsoft as well. This morning, so there was a Moody's downgrade rating that came out this morning of the U.S. credit rating. The markets didn't like that too much. Futures tumbled a little bit. The Treasury yields, they were up above 5% this morning. Let me check where they are right now. I think they're still, they're actually not right at the 5% mark. They're now down to about 4.5%. That's the 30-year Treasury. Sorry about that. That one jumped over 5%. 10-year Treasury is right around 4.5. They each jumped up for that as well. As we sit right now, the major indices, negative territory, not anything to sneeze at, though. The Dow Jones is down 0.5%. The S&P 500 is down 0.5%, and the Nasdaq is down 0.75%. So we'll have to see. Some of that, I'm sure, is due to the rating, and there's always going to be some ebb and flow that happens with sell-offs and different things like that, especially after the good week we had last week. So earnings season, folks, winding down just a bit. Not a lot today. Tomorrow we get Home Depot. Wednesday we get Lowe's, Target, and Zoom. That's really the big day. Thursday we get Intuit. We're kind of waiting for next week. Next week we see NVIDIA report, and then that's really kind of the de facto end of earnings season for quarter one before we look forward now to quarter two. We also get this week, today we get the leading economic indicators for April. We just mentioned the Moody's rating that came out yesterday, earlier today. Tomorrow, Wednesday, not much. Thursday, we get existing home sales. Friday, new home sales. So that's kind of what we're looking at here. Sam, a real interesting article here that we saw here. The top 10, quote, BRI stocks to invest in. Our radio audience, I did the quotation thing with my hands because we have to see if this is really BRI. What can you tell us about this article from the Impact Investor, Sam?
Yeah, I was perusing the interwebs the other day and I came across this, and it's interesting, Seth, because BRI is becoming more and more popular. We've read a couple of articles talking about BRI, so more outlets are getting on board, or at least trying to cater to the audience that's interested in BRI. The problem with that is some of them really don't know what they're talking about. So I found this article. It's by the Impact Investor, and it released their list of top 10, you're right, quote unquote, BRI stocks to invest in, and frankly, it left a lot, Seth, to be desired, because get this, half, it's just a list of 10, half is not BRI, including Kohl's, Tyson Foods, and even Walmart. And if you've listened to our show for even a couple weeks, you would know that Walmart is far from BRI. Yeah. But the article even acknowledges that, actually, weirdly enough. They say, Walmart directly donates to abortion and LGBT causes. But, they say Walmart also sells Christian books. So doesn't that kind of make up for it in the whole BRI thing?
Well, that's good.
Right? So who's to say, right? Who's even to say what BRI is, according to this list? Likewise, the list says that Tyson Foods is a good investment because the company supports religious causes, but ignores that it donates to numerous LGBT activist causes as well.
Interesting stuff, Sam. Sam, tell us the definition there. So I know Impact Investors, they have a definition of BRI. I can guess it's probably not the same as ours, but what did they say?
It's similar, but there's some key distinctions here. So they say, quote, biblically responsible investing keeps your investments in line with your faith. That's true. Okay. Only companies that give back to communities and adhere to the same moral principles are available for investment. That's kind of true, kind of not true. It also says biblically responsible investments will never venture into companies that clash with faith-based principles, and that's the main point.
Very interesting, Sam. So let's try to make some sense of this, because I think, again, it provides us a good opportunity to clarify what we mean. As always, do it in charity, honesty, love, for sure, but we have to speak the truth here. Obviously, like you said, we have a different opinion of what BRI is than this publication does. What we care about most, we could care less. It's great that Walmart sells Christian books. Awesome. We don't care about that in the final analysis. What we care about is what they do with investor dollars. That is the definition of BRI, what they do with investor dollars. It's concerning to me, Sam, truthfully, that This publication was so quick to praise some of these, like they gave the Walmart example, because it has Christian roots, because it sells Christian books, Christian materials. This is the same company, folks, as Sam mentioned. They pay for their employees to travel across state lines to murder their babies. They promote the LGBTQ agenda with investor dollars. The biblical comparison I would make, Sam, truthfully, is the Pharisees. The Pharisees were men who looked good on the outside, selling Christian books, Christian roots, that sort of thing. But on the inside, they were like tombs. They were full of dead men's flesh, as Jesus describes it, sons of their father, the devil. That would be comparative to using shareholder dollars to fund evil things.
Or it'd be like calling Harvard a Christian school.
Yeah, exactly.
Just because it was
founded by Christians. It's ridiculous. What we care about most, I really do believe this, we get this from the scriptures, and it's really from God first. 1 Samuel 16:7. What we care about most with our money is what a company does with it, what God has entrusted us to steward well. You know, Tyson, Sam, presents a similar conundrum. Family values, we love that. Supporting Christian causes, great. Tyson was once on our buy list, by the way. It was, several years ago. The company's now sponsored several gay pride parades in the last few years. The question we have to ask ourselves is, do we want companies that look good on the outside, Christian sort of vision that they kind of project, or do we want them to truly honor God with our money? And that's where I think, Sam, we can apply 1 Samuel 16 here, that man looks at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. And the heart here is really what these companies are doing with the money, sometimes behind the scenes. And, I do think BRI centers entirely, when we're talking about definitions here, it centers around what a company does with shareholder dollars, as we mentioned, not necessarily promoting Christian values with said dollars, but not promoting anti-Christian values. That's really what we want. Would we love it if a company had put a cross up, said we're a Christian company? Absolutely, we would love that. But that is definitionally not biblically responsible investing. What matters is that the company does not support gambling with investor dollars, does not support Planned Parenthood with investor dollars, does not support the Trevor Project with investor dollars, different things like that. We just want these companies to be a good business. Sam, I wish that we could have all these major shareholders and CEOs in here and tell them, just run your business. It would make our lives so much easier.
It's really not hard to do. You're actually really adding on top to what you're doing by pursuing this nonsense.
Yeah,
so it's more work.
Run the business. We were talking earlier in the chat about common sense and the need for common sense in the public school, and how, so many curriculums are teaching all these crazy, ridiculous things. If they just taught common sense, it'd be so much better. That's all we want. We just want common sense. And Sam, the last thing I'll say about this, I think there is a difference between biblically responsible investing and impact investing.
I was going to say, I think that's where this all comes down to. It's in the name, impact investor.
Exactly
that's
right.
the name of the website. So their primary concern is impact. What is doing positive good for Christianity, as opposed to thinking, what are the negative sides to these companies?
Exactly right. That's absolutely right. And there's nothing wrong with impact investing. It's if it's able to be done rightly, I think it can be a great thing and a great tool. But we believe that what is far more important and long-term also effective is biblically responsible investing. That comes first. If you can do the impact investing, that's great. But biblically responsible investing is what is really effective. That's really what gets to the bottom line. We always say, we want to hit companies in the bottom line. We want to hit companies where it counts with our money, which means we're not going to invest our money in these companies that are doing wretched things. That's simply what it comes down to. So, folks, you can't allow your money to be invested into that which God hates. He's entrusted you to steward it well. And so we need to do that. We've been given a command to do that. We have a responsibility to do that. That's in the name, biblically responsible investing, that it is our responsibility to do well with that which God has entrusted to us. And we believe that if we do so, that God's going to be pleased by it and he's going to bless it. And the blessing may come in this life. It will definitely come in eternity. I'll take the blessing in eternity first, whether or not I get the blessing in this life. It may come in this life, it may not, but you can be confident that it's going to be good, better than anything you could ever imagine or hope for. Well, it was a good show today, folks. I appreciate you all joining today. Tomorrow, Shana will be back. I'm excited for it, the whole show. I will not be on the show tomorrow. It is my son's birthday, so I will miss all of you tomorrow, but I'll be back, Lord willing, on Wednesday for the show, and I'll be excited to join you there for it. But I know you'll be very excited, folks. Just a reminder, get your call queued up. If you want to call into the program, get your call queued up right at the top of the show. 9:05 Eastern Time is the best time to call. You'll get right in the call queue. Shana will get to you. It's great to be here with you, folks. Remember, it's all his. Let's be found good and faithful stewards with the money that that God has given to us. God bless. We'll see you next time on Financial Issues.
If we ever forget that we're one nation under God, then we will be a nation going under.
Thank you for joining us. This has been an FISM production.